What you want, Furbus? No, we don't have anything for you. What? We don't have anything for you.
I was born into Depression, and in those days, it was kind of tough for my mother and dad. Used to go to different couple places up in Maumee, or where they had like a bill, and they paid it at the end of whenever they got paid. And well, it was a rough time for them. And at one time they bought, off of Ford Street, I think it was 3.5 acres that they thought they were going to build a house there someday, but they farmed it out. John Kohler, he made us wooden mallets that we could go around, break up the big chunks for. Kids, we would do anything.
You grew up on the house on Illinois.
On Illinois Avenue, yes.
Okay.
I lived there till probably till I got almost 20 years old, probably. Born and raised there.
Tell me the part about the hobos.
Yeah, they would knock on the door, and they would be evidently on their trip on the box. They rode boxcars, actually. They would hop on them, and then they would stop off at different towns and spend a little time there, and they would get always knock on the door, and my mother always fed them. She always made homemade soup and homemade bread, and made them sit on a porch. She wouldn't let them in the house, and then sometimes she even gave them coffee to go brew their own stuff, and they used to get old vegetable cans and make it like a tripod and make a fire and boil the coffee. But yeah, my mother always seemed like she had a kind heart and would take care of them.
Okay.
One of them was born in Hurba Vrupka, the other was Mala Vrupka.
Oh.
And it was just like almost walking across the street. That's how the towns or village was separated. Yeah, that's when he was born.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was born in 1899, June. But it seemed like that my mother could get it out faster in Czech than she could with trying to get words out of English, because
sure.
Actually they didn't know how to even speak English when they first came over, and I think they learned how to speak English more or less from us kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still remember I had a tough time when I went to grade school. Some of the words, you didn't know what they were. There would be a lot of people that we knew in this Toledo area that they would get letters from the old country, mm-hmm. and they would always bring them over to Grandma to translate them for them.
Oh.
So because she could still
do both.
Yeah, I was surprised she kept evidently up on it a lot.
Your mom didn't work.
But actually she never worked in any specific job. She worked a little bit. I think she worked at a hospitals down in Toledo, St. Vincent's. But around here, when she settled here in Maumee, she did a lot of what they call housekeeping for people, certain people. And I think one of them was on River Road down here, Mrs. Sheeble.
That's a costume my mother wore.
Yeah.
Over when they were over in the old country, and then I guess Frank and John donated her costume to somebody. There's a Czech museum in someplace in Wisconsin, I think it was.
Because in those days, being strong Catholics, we could not eat meat on Fridays. Now it has all changed, and she always used to make Well, a lot of times we ate pancakes even for supper.
I'm guessing you like the sauerkraut soup.
Yeah, that was always a tradition on New Year's or Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
She would put caraway seeds and mushrooms in it, little button mushrooms. And
That's my dad. And he fought on the German side against the United States. Of course, he was in Czech Republic over there. They were got taken over by the Germans.
And that was World War One, right?
Yeah.
You said your dad worked in the meat packing plant, and then what happened when he switched?
well, when he switched over shortly after that, he got tired of wading in water all the time and slaughtering pigs and stuff, and went to work for Schultz Die Casting that made like carburetors and stuff, and then they had to use a bandsaw to cut them and separate them, and they got paid by how many they would do a day, and he got too fast and cut his one finger off. And he's got luckily he had a little stub there, and it healed up, and he still could work. In fact, upstairs I think still got his last paycheck. I think he made $57 a week. Kind of miss him, both of them.
Yeah.
And actually, and
Yeah, that's the old homestead yet. That's the old homestead. There's a dog. That was John's dog, though. King. Irish setter. And yeah, my dad built that garage, and we had like a little playroom in here. The car was parked on this side, and my dad had a workbench here, but he made us a room back there where we spend a lot of times, all three of us. Just, that was our hangout. No, you know what we used that wagon for? My brother Frank played the accordion, and it was our turn to haul it in the wagon down to the bus station, which was on the corner by St. Joe's Church, where that, well, it's a upholstery place now. Bob's Interiors or somebody's Interior. Years ago, there used to be a restaurant, and also it was a Greyhound station. And they always had a bench there just to sit, and there was about 4 or 5 of us guys would hang around and just watch traffic.
How old were you when you guys would do that?
Oh, just before high school, I think it was. And then one guy finally got a radio with a battery in it. He used to bring it along. We could listen to music. And a couple doors down where the Maumee Quick Print is now,
Yep.
used to be a Franklin ice cream store. And we got to know the lady there, and we always used to buy a quart of ice cream, and she would cut it in half with a knife. And we would buy the whole quart, then we would go down there and sit and eat the ice cream. That was our pastime, watching traffic. John was more, well, we were all outdoorsmen. We would take the dog and just take off and go into the woods and wander around. And we didn't mind in the wintertime getting out. There was a pond across the street, and many times, you know how us kids are, or anybody's kids, they want to test the ice. And we'd fall through, and oh boy, we're in trouble. It wasn't that deep of a pond. It wouldn't go over your head or anything like that. You had to have a key and tighten them up, and boy, my dad used to get mad at us when we would rip the sole off the shoes, because he was the cobbler, and he had a tool or a steel cap that you would put the shoes on, and he would resole our shoes. And in those days, you had to do everything yourself. I skate a lot. All night long, we'd build a fire and wouldn't have to worry about it getting out of control, because we always build it near shore.
If you could pick growing up now or growing up back then, which one would you pick?
I think in those days we spent a lot more outdoors,
Mm-hmm.
because, of course, you don't have the convenience of TVs and all kinds of modern technology like that. You entered, radio was your biggest entertainment in those days. I can still remember listen to WJR, which is out of Detroit. And listen to anything that was on there. You want to listen to a ball game, you had to listen to it on the radio. Couldn't watch it. And that's what I say. You were out entertaining yourself.
Yeah.
You just say, "Oh, I'm going for a walk or all that. I'll be home by dark."
Frank, my oldest brother, went in the Navy, and John was in the Army, and John was stationed at, I think it's Fort Myers in Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C., and he became a lifeguard in a swimming pool.
Really?
That's where he spent his Army life. And Frank was in the Navy, and he was on a destroyer that was in the ocean when they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. And he was in high school, he was a lot to do with film and stuff. And he ran a projector at high school and stuff. And that's what he did when he was in the Navy, was ran a Navy projector, but he did go overseas. Well, the reason I didn't get drafted with my two brothers was because when I was about 9 years old, I had scarlet fever so bad that I lost all my hair, for one thing, they tell me, and I had a growth on my side of my neck, and they lanced it and stuff, and in that when I had scarlet fever so bad, I had punctured eardrums, and I went through down to recruiting down to Toledo, and they were going through the line, and they were giving us our health inspections and stuff, and checked my ears, and oh, you got punctured eardrums. You'll be what they called 4F at that time. And reason they said that I was 4F, because in those days they still used a lot of tear gas, and they said if I would be near any of that and it would get into my ears, it could kill me. So they said, no way you're going to be drafted in. And give credit for anybody who did serve in the Army or in the service. And a lot of my friends went and stuff, but I stayed back. And
Were you mad that you couldn't go?
well, disappointed. I think it's everybody at that time had a feeling that they should do their duty to serve their country, and consequently didn't get the opportunity. But we all survived. I stayed back and did my duty and won World War.
And you started working at AP when you were...
I was 14 years old. I had to help my mother. At that time, Dad when we had one car, and she had to walk up there and buy groceries, and I would have helped carry them back to our house on Illinois Avenue. One time I was out in front, and somebody had just quit because they didn't want to sort rotten potatoes, I guess, in the back, and they asked if I wanted to work, and yeah. Well, how soon can you be back? And I said, well, give me an hour to go home and come back. And started then, and had to wear a white shirt and black bow ties in those days. Went to produce, grocery, and ended up in the dairy department. Ran a dairy. At that time, we used to sell what they call 8 o'clock coffee. 1 pound of coffee was 37 cents, and I think a 3-pound bag was $1.30 something. Spent almost all day just grinding coffee. Yeah, after I graduated, I just kept on working in several stores in Toledo area, running the dairy, and then got promoted to produce, and was in the produce department, I think, on Central Avenue and Cherry Street. And they asked me if I wanted to become an assistant manager. And I said, well, it's a promotion and it's more money, I'll go for it. Started out as assistant manager at an AP on Dorn, Detroit. And store manager's job at Rossford, Ohio was my first store, which was a lot of Czech people lived in Rossford. And some people came in, and the mother and daughter were standing by some someplace and they were looking for something, and they were talking in their native language, and at that time I could still translate pretty good, and I spoke up to them and I said, "Oh, I know where you went," and I walked over and they were surprised that I knew what they were looking for and where it was. When we used to take bus trips to Detroit with all the managers when we had a managers meeting, or they would have something up in Detroit because that's where our headquarters were.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one time a lot of the managers drove in, and here a bunch of us managers here in Toledo got together, and we used to have pop machines. Well, we wouldn't turn in all the cash on that. The managers all got together and everybody decided we're going to rent a bus. So we went up there in a bus and everyone was there looking at us. Must have been about 8 or 10 of us that we came in on that bus, and they would say, "Well, how can they afford to go bring a bus in?" We didn't tell them how we did it, but we had good times. There's bad times and good times. And then they asked me if I wanted to go to work in the office, which was on Westwood Avenue. Worked in there for about 3 years. I did advertising and was a buyer for them. Bought all the candy and the Easter time and Christmas time and all the dairy products, and bought eggs, and was in charge of company cars and buying company cars and maintenance on company cars. It was challenging. I didn't know how much there was to do until I got involved in it. Spent many extra Saturday mornings in there trying to get caught up on all the paperwork and stuff you had to do. Didn't have computers in those days. Everything was by hand.
Did you like it?
Well, yes, I did, and shortly after that, they decided to move all the operations of the Toledo area into Detroit. I was offered to either leave or go back out in the stores. So I went back out in the stores, and then there was an opening for a manager in Oregon. And I was in Oregon when Toledo area had the blizzard of 78 or whatever it was. One of my co-workers had a four-wheel drive car, and they picked me up here on River Road and took me into work. We opened up the store with minimum help. Anybody that had a bread route that was going out that way, I just told them, leave all your surplus bread here, and we sold out. And then I used to bring groceries home for the whole neighborhood here, and somebody would meet me down at the corner with a sled and with the kids, and we'd bring it back here and distribute it. So we kind of took care of people like that. Shortly after that, they decided they were going to close all the stores in the Toledo area, which was around 1985. And I laid around home for about a year and applied for a job with a food broker, which calls on stores and tries to sell merchandise. I've seen all ends of it, from the buying end of it to the selling end of it. And Shipper Brokerage Company, I worked for them for 10 years and covered Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana out of my house here, and had a company car. So
Oh, you worked from home for those
Yeah.
10 years? Was that nice?
Well, I had to go down for sales meetings and stuff,
Uh-huh.
maybe twice a month or something, and that was fun. That's all I've ever done is food. Then after that, I retired and stayed around home for about a year and got tired of that. And then went to work part-time for another food broker, which called mostly on corner stores, and do what they call resets, pull all the old stuff off, outdated or discontinued, and then give you telling you where everything went on the shelf. Did that for, well, probably another 10 years almost, and then retired at 80 years old. We had like a little club, what we called Club Coupe Cars. About 5 of us guys that hung around together, and we all used to meet at this friend's house, Don Spindlin. We had a big backyard and stuff. Then we would take turns of driving around, and we always used to go around to different places and looking for entertainment, you might call it.
Mm-hmm.
One time we went to Pearson Park, and it was a nice park up in off in East Toledo. And we just started, and my wife Mary and a friend of hers, Norma Hughes, were good friends, and they always used to go there. It had like a outdoor roller skating ring. And we always used to hang around there and watch, and all of a sudden, this friend of mine, Jim Brindley, spotted this Norma and started talking, and pretty soon Mary was there. We started hanging around, and it seemed like that we used to go there quite often then.
And what kind of dates did you say you'd go on to?
Oh, we used to go to like the old Valentine Theater downtown Toledo and Paramount, and go to a lot of movies and a lot of events at the sports arena, the ice skating shows, and any kind of entertainment, and Globetrotters, and I think Grandma used to get tired of going to some of these places because I was enthused about them. And Jim and Wetchcall got married, Norma, and we were in their wedding. And after that, your grandmother and I started hanging around more and more together, and it just escalated. And after about 4 years, we decided we'd get married. Yeah, got married in 1954 at Holy Rosary on the east side. Had a reception on the east side called Sokol Hall. And after that, it was family. Well, when we first got married, we found an apartment on Sherman Street, which is off of Cherry Street, above a house. It was the upstairs that we rented. I think we probably lived there about a year. Then Mary's mother and dad lived on the east side in Ironville, which is no longer there because they got forced out when some industrial park was going to develop all that area. They had some friends that had a little bungalow that we decided we rented. We rented it for about a year and a half. I think Debbie was born about that time. Then we decided we were going to start looking for a house of our own, and we used to go to my mother, which is in Maumee, and went past this house a couple times, and it came up for sale, and we kind of liked it. And
what do I think of it? And I said, well, it's nice. And I didn't want to favor it because my mom and dad lived down the road, you know how that goes. And she said, no, that don't bother me to live that close to them. So, yeah, we bought it and raised all four of them here.
Of course, after they moved all out, we added on to the house. Because we knew they would be coming in pairs.
It's funny. When I was going to high school and I met your mother, Mary, I had about 5 or 6 friends. But you know, it seems like that after you get married, the friendship of those people just gets faded out. And there was a lot of them that your Mary knew. She went to high school with this Don Schmidlin's, his wife. She was from Central. And somebody else, Jim Brindley, ended up marrying a girl that was a good friend of Mary's. And she was from the east side. And we just seemed like you lose interest, but you pick up new friends when Mary went to work at the bank. And she met people there. And there was Shorty and Pee Wee and Clement Maryland, Joan and Jim Hendricks. And we started hanging around with that. We used to play cards, for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
We would go from, well, we'll meet at your house next week and next week and that way. So you pick up different friends from your high school friends
Yeah.
through working situation.
Is it weird to see a city change so much over so many years?
Well, yeah, when I started working with the A.P. up there across from the police station now, that little building still there. And I think at that time there was about 3,000 people in Maumee, and of course a lot of them shopped at the store, and you got to know just about everybody that in Maumee. Then all of a sudden it just started expanding, and never heard of that street, never heard of that. Where's that at? I still don't know where a lot of them are, but I think we're up to 14,000 something in Maumee now, and that's. But oh yeah, that was all country out there where they live. And when my mom and dad built it down there, well, let me see. That house wasn't there. That house wasn't there. That house, same guy built our house, built the one next door. And that one house next door was there. Then that was an empty lot. That brown house was an old house. It's been around for a while. Down where my mother and dad lived across the street. It was all vacant lots.
What were the kids like growing up?
Very quiet. Everybody more or less kept to themselves. No, there wasn't no fighting or anything like that.
No.
Everybody seemed like they got along
Really?
pretty good. Yeah.
Diane and Donna didn't fight?
No, we didn't have any problem with any of the kids. They kept them under control.
Yeah.
It seemed like we got along. But I still say to this day that Mary's the one that raised the family, because I worked an awful lot of hours when I was in management and stuff, and they said, "Oh yeah, you can take a day off if your store's right." Well, you can say it's right, but the supervisor comes in, they always find something wrong.
Something.
Yeah, so when we lived here, the kids used to go over here to Fort Miami. They had a playground and everything else like that. I got an old bell and something. All I had to do was clang it about 4 or 5 times, and they heard that. They knew it's come home.
Did your neighbors ever complain about that?
No, they didn't. And they used to cut through here because they were real good friends with Cleghorns over here, next to the school building, and they had a couple kids about the same age as ours, so they would all probably go over to the playground and play. And we used to have a playground, Ford Field. There was one at the library for the summer, that was. And then they had one here in Fort Miami. And they would have crafts and stuff to entertain us. And that was the big summer projects. We never really took any big vacations.
Yeah.
I think most of them were spent up at Hemlock Lake for many years. And I know many times we used to drive from here clear up into Canada across the bridge to a Chinese restaurant. And Maumee was it called. And everybody said, "You want to clear to Canada to have Chinese?" But the kids liked it, and they ate there, so they were happy. We didn't do a lot of traveling. I think one time I know we went to New York with them, and I think that was probably the furthest we went with them. Well, we would go up to that Cascades up in Michigan, and we did travel a few times with. I did take my brother John was stationed at the National Park in Washington, and I did take my mother and dad, and I drove my car there, and we spent the weekend or some time with them.
Would they ever talk about their family and be like, "Oh, I wish they could come over. I wish."
Yeah, my mother went back when my mother was, I think, she hadn't seen her mother in 33 years, and she got enough money together, both of them, and she went over, and shortly after she came back, her mother died, and I remember that was a pretty sad day for her. any kind of a holiday or anything else, we always ended up going to her mother's.
The burnings.
Yeah. Because, well, they criticized, and I can see why they would criticize, because my mother and I would talk, would check,
Oh.
and, you know, and I would always try to translate them to Mary, that they're not talking about you, you know. That's the first thing you think of. Well, they're asking your mother to always remember Kochichi Ochi, which means green eyes.
Oh.
Or cat eyes, you know, cat green eyes. Yeah, she can still spit that out, because my mother would always tease her about different things. Yeah, there's a young picture of my mother. They all say that your mother looks like her.
My mom?
Yeah.
Oh, I can see it.
A little bit.
I can see it.
And they say I look like my mother too.
Did you like, having 4 kids? Was it busy?
Well, yes, it was busy, especially when the last 2 were only 13 months apart. They were almost like twins.
Yeah.
Which was Donna and Diane. But yeah, don't regret having the 4 kids.
They all turned out pretty good.
They all had to listen, and yeah, part of all the kids and grandkids too. Didn't have any problem with any of the grandkids either, and none of the all came out good.